I think Dak Prescott doesn't get enough credit for everything that he does. All right, I'm Albert Breer of the MMQB and Sports Illustrated. We're trying something new here this year with the mailbag, which has always been one of my favorite things to do because it allows me to interact with all of you guys. So instead of doing it strictly as a written thing this year, we're going to try to allow for you guys to interact with us on another level and send videos in and introduce yourself. We'll show your face on these videos so you guys will get a little piece of it as well and really get you the answers that you want to your questions. And I'm going to do it off the cuff. So I'm not going to be sitting here researching anything. I'm just going to give you my answer to all of your questions off the cuff. And we're going to start right here. I got my phone. Our producer, Alex, is sending me videos. And we'll start right here with this one.
Hey, Albert. As a Colts fan, I've been looking for a quarterback since the day Andrew Luck retired in 2019. We got really excited with the fourth pick of the draft last year and taking Anthony Richardson, and unfortunately, we only got to see a couple games. And we saw some flashes, but we also saw a guy that hasn't seen a lot of live action and needs a lot of work still. From an outside perspective and a professional perspective, what is your opinion on a good season for Anthony Richardson? Whether it be a little bit of improvement, whether it be playoffs, what are you looking for in Anthony Richardson for the Colts to go after this season? We got our guy. Let's go for it.
Well, there are a couple of things. I don't know that you're going to have the full answer on Anthony Richardson after this year because so much of it relates to health, and his inability to stay healthy in high school and college followed him into the pros. Obviously he got hurt twice at the beginning of last year. You always have questions when a quarterback hurts his throwing shoulder. He hurt his throwing shoulder. He had the concussion before that. So this is going to start and end with Anthony Richardson's ability to stay healthy. Can he stay healthy? If he makes it through the year, then that's, like a win. Just baseline, that's a win, being able to make it through the year healthy. Of course, that doesn't mean he's going to be able to make it through year three or year four or year five or year six healthy. But I think that piece of it has to be in place, showing that he can make it through an NFL season healthy. And I think as relates to that, how the Colts manage him through the season is important as well. Obviously, you want to be careful in teaching him how to fall. That's something they've worked on this offseason. Teaching him how to slide. It's something they've worked on this offseason. Teaching him how to protect himself. But you also don't want to take away what's so unique about him as a player. So for Shane Steichen, who of course worked with a quarterback who did a lot with his legs and Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, they have to come up with a formula for getting the most out of Anthony Richardson, leveraging him, being able to threaten defenses with his legs, but at the same time, teaching him to protect himself. So that'll be a challenge. The other thing that I think you're going to look at is just from a leadership standpoint, how vocal he is. One thing that was very apparent when he was at camp is how much faster things are moving now with their offense. And last year, there was a lot of hand holding that went on. This year, they've been able to give him more and allow him more power at the line of scrimmage. So some of those things you're going to be able to see in how vocal he is before the snap, how few busts they have, how few protection issues they have. That's stuff that they've really spent a lot of time working on in the summer. And they actually did longer, faster paced walkthroughs. They're not exactly didn't make it exactly like two-a-days used to be, but trying to simulate that to try and feed Anthony Richardson through a fire hose and trying to get him to drink through that fire hose and learning more at a faster and faster pace. So I think those two things, his health, how they manage him, those things relate to each other, and then how much command he has at the line of scrimmage. I think those are two things you can look for and tie to the win-loss record and seeing where you are with Anthony Richardson coming out of 2024 and going into 2025, which would be a pivotal year because, of course, after 25, he'd be eligible for a second contract.
Hey, guys. Soon to be long-suffering Patriots fan here. And my question for you guys is, how bad is this Patriots season going to be? Are they going to be the worst team in the AFC? And what does the best-case scenario look like for this rebuilding Patriots team? Thanks again. Love the show.
Well, I don't know if you're as old as I am, but I grew up in New England, and I am old enough to remember the 1993 Patriots, and that was the team that changed everything. And that team finished 5-11, but the perception of what the Patriots were and could become changed at the end of that year. Up until that point, they had been one of the doormats of the NFL, one of the laughing stocks of the NFL, despite making a Super Bowl run in 1985 and being really good in the mid 70s. For the most part, they were seen as a second class organization. Really, the arrival of Bill Parcells and Drew Bledsoe changed everything. And the reason I bring up that season specifically is they still weren't very good. But by the end of the year, they gotten their rookie quarterback in there. He had shown a lot of promise, and they started winning games. They finished that year 5-11, I believe, on a 4-game winning streak. And I'm not saying it has to look exactly like that, but that's what you want to see is the trajectory heading upwards. So is Drake May in there? Does Drake May start to, show you what he can be, why he was the third pick in the draft? You see Gerard Mayo settling into his role as the head coach. How do the coordinators, Alex Van Pelt and DeMarcus Covington, look? Is the overall look of the team one that has a lot of young players at the center of it? And this draft class is going to be an important one. So do you see guys like Caden Wallace and Jalen Polk and Javon Baker out there contributing? Those are the things that you want to see. Again, at the end of the 1993 season, and this is a generation ago now, and I'm dating myself, you could tell the Patriots were heading places. That's what I think you got to be looking for at the 2024 Patriots season is by the end of the season, does it look like they're going somewhere with the people that they've put in place?
How about them Cowboys? Are we getting 2022 Dak Prescott or are we getting 2023 Dak Prescott? I know Micah Parsons is going to deliver. Is Dak Prescott going to deliver?
I think Dak Prescott doesn't get enough credit for everything that he does for the Cowboys and what he's been able to accomplish the last couple of years with some of the changes on the coaching staff, losing Kellen Moore, Brian Schottenheimer coming in an elevated role, and with some of the moving pieces around him on offense. Obviously the offensive line has had those moving parts the last few years, longer strength for the Cowboys. Losing Tyron Smith to injury over and over again, breaking in young players along that offensive line. Obviously they feel like they found some good guys up there. And then, like you look at the skill positions, CeeDee Lamb had a great year last year, but what do they have around CeeDee Lamb? Where's the running game post Zeke Elliott? Tony Pollard obviously gone now. There's a lot on Dak Prescott to be at his very best. I think you're going to get a very good version of Dak Prescott this year. I think McCarthy and Schottenheimer are going to do a good job putting him in position to succeed. But I think at this point in his career, he's also capable of elevating people around him. I think it showed in the year that CeeDee Lamb had last year. I think it showed in Dak Prescott being able to keep the team moving and keep the team at a playoff level, despite some of the moving pieces they had around him. And I'd expect that Dak Prescott's going to have a very good year. I do think to some degree the Cowboys are with Dak Prescott where the Rams were with Jared Goff in 2020. So whether or not they get a long-term deal with him done over the next few days, I think there have been some questions about whether or not they can get over the top with the team as presently constituted and Dak Prescott as the quarterback. But I don't think Dak Prescott is going to disappoint in 2024.
So can we expect Aaron Rodgers to Garrett Wilson to look like all of those connections to Davante Adams from the past?
That's a good question. I do think that the connection between Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson will be solid. The bar is very high when you're talking about what he had with Davante Adams for all of those years. But he's built those connections with a bunch of different guys, right? Like, so even if it wasn't quite at the same level of Adams, you think about the connections he's had with guys like Greg Jennings and Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. And even on the next level down, guys like Alan Lazard, who's there with him with the Jets now. And I think a big part of that is what you summer with Garrett and Aaron getting after each other. Garrett Wilson's a competitive kid who sets a very, very high bar for himself. And when you get two people who are like that together, sometimes there can be competitive tension. I don't think either guy minded having those confrontations or has minded having those confrontations over the last year and a half. That it became public, I mean, it is what it is. I think Garrett Wilson's going to have a fantastic year. I think he's probably a first or second team All-Pro receiver this year if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy because of what Aaron Rodgers brings to the table for him. And I mean, look, like this is a guy who was offensive rookie of the year without this sort of quarterback play 2 years ago, who played really well last year, despite all the injury issues the Jets had at the position in 2023. I would expect him to have a huge year with a lot on the line. Again, he's another guy who's going to be up for a contract in 2025. I'd expect a very, very big year from Garrett Wilson playing with Aaron Rodgers, assuming Aaron Rodgers stays in the field.
Hey, Albert, I'm curious if you think the Bears have enough talented running back to make a playoff run with DeAndre Swift now. And then second question would be, what do you think Caleb Williams has to do in order to make that the best trade that's happened in NFL history?
Well, I like where the trade is right now. Just in the fact that you were able to start to use your picks as capital, flip one for Keenan Allen. You were able to go and get Darnell Wright, who's a key piece to their offensive line going forward and should be for the next 10 years, and then wind up with DJ Moore out of it. Like, you got lucky a little bit without question. And that the Panthers wound up being the worst team in the league. That's not something you were counting on happening when you made the trade, but obviously it really worked out for them. And I do think Caleb Williams is going to play really well, in large part because of the way they've ramped him up. The question, I think, at running back is an interesting one, because if you want to take some of the pressure off of your quarterback, one way to do that is through the running game. And if you've looked over the years, you can see where young quarterbacks have had breakthroughs because of the running backs playing next to them. Dak Prescott played great as a rookie. Zeke Elliott was next to him. Jared Goff had an awesome second year in the NFL in 2017, broke through. Todd Gurley had a great year next to him as well. If you want to go all the way back to guys like Matt Ryan and Joe Flacco, when they sort of changed the dynamic for rookie quarterbacks, Matt Ryan had Michael Turner next to him, who was fantastic. And Joe Flacco had Ray Rice, who was a contender for Rookie of the Year in 2008. So, I think if you look at the history of young quarterbacks who've had success, a lot of times there's a strong running game and a strong running back next to him. DeAndre Swift's looked great in camp. I don't think there's any question about what DeAndre Swift can do. The question is whether or not you can keep him healthy, because I do not think the Bears have great depth at that position. And so you're going to have to work on managing him. And like, Swift came into camp, he looked lighter, he looked faster, he looked quicker. But, again, you have to go back to why the Lions traded him a year and a half ago to Philadelphia. The reason why was because they didn't think he could stay healthy. The Eagles got a good year out of him. They let him go. They move on and go and get Saquon Barkley because they wanted to level up at the position. Again, I think Swift's a very capable back. The question is whether or not he's going to be able to stay healthy. And that's something, of course, we can't determine here before the season even starts.
Hey, Albert, Jesse here. With all the changes, front office, ownership, coaching staff, overhaul of the roster for the Commanders, what do you think their ceiling is this year and their floor is?
I think their ceiling is, I mentioned this with the Patriots earlier. I think they are more talented than the Patriots, but same sort of idea, where I think it's probably going to be bumpy early on with the amount of new people that they have all over the roster. But they do have, some real representative talent on the team. If you look at Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen and Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson, they expect big things out of him at that running back position. So, I see this as a team that's going to have a bumpy start to the year, going to have some ups and downs early in the year. What you're looking for is the trajectory of the franchise going forward and where they're going to be in week 17, week 18. Like, what do they look like at the end of the year? Do you have real hope for 2025? I think that that's what you're looking at when you're grading out how Dan Quinn and Adam Peters' first year goes there, because the amount of change that's happened. My guess would be, if you really drew it up, it's like you start 2 or 3 wins in the first half of the year, then you wind up with 7 or 8. That I think is probably the ceiling. The floor is being right back where you were last year. And that happens if you get nicked up at quarterback, if the offensive tackle issue becomes a bigger problem, if you can't manage that properly, if the issue at the edge makes it impossible to protect your corners. I mean, really, part of the reason the Commanders rebuild was going to take more than 1 year is because their holes are at premium positions. They had a hole at edge rusher. They have a hole at tackle. They came into the offseason with a hole at quarterback, and they've got issues at corner still. You can't fix all of those in one offseason. So they've worked on those, but they haven't fixed them. And I think that limits how far they're going to go. I think that makes the floor relatively low. And that's why I think the ceiling is that they're simply a team that's improving at the end of the year. for our first video mailbag. So feel free to send me any feedback you guys have on how we did here. Hopefully we can pace it a little better next time, but I'm welcome to all the feedback you got. At Albert Breer on Twitter, at Albert_Breer on Instagram, at Albert R. Breer on Facebook. You guys can get to me on any of those three platforms, and you can send your questions in at breersimailbag@gmail.com. We will post your videos like we have right here. You get your face on the videos. You'll be able to ask me the questions directly. Again, this is a way that we want to interact with you guys going forward as the 2024 season gets going. We're looking forward to it. Know you guys are too. Send those questions in.